Welcome to the Property Management Mastermind Show with your host, Brad Larsen. Brad owns one of the fastest growing property management companies in San Antonio, Texas. This podcast is for property managers by property managers. You'll hear from industry-leading professionals on best practices, new ideas, success stories, and lessons learned. This is your opportunity to learn about the latest industry buzz surrounding property management, as well as tips and strategies to improve your business.
This show is sponsored by the best home inspection software on the market for property managers. We endorse and use Z-Inspector as our software of choice for our team to document home inspections. We particularly like their 360 degrees camera system that produces amazing views of the interior room. Your clients will love Z-Inspector documented inspections you provide them. Visit www.zinspector.com to learn more.
If you are looking to enhance your tenant's moving experience, cut down on phone calls or emails to you or your staff regarding utilities, then you must connect yourself, your team, and your tenants with Citizen Home Solutions. Citizen Home Solutions takes the hassle of utilities off your hands and your tenants. Best of all, we do it for free. Build us into your tenant benefit package. Oh, and start benefiting from our revenue share program. Yes, we pay you a quarterly commission on specific services your tenant opts into. Want to know more? Give us a call today at 877-528-3824 or visit pmcpartner.com.
Welcome everybody to another edition of the Property Management Mastermind. I am your podcast host, Brad Larsen, and today's guest, we're going to be talking to Shawn Johnson from HomeVault. And what we're going to be doing as we kick this off is we're going to be talking through several different things on a conversational level. And it's very interesting to see what they've done at HomeVault. Now, Shawn is the CEO of this new venture. And without me trying to butcher the description of what it is and who it is, I'm going to slowly introduce Shawn. You know, you got to speak slow for him because he's in New Mexico and things are on a different time level there. And so without further ado, I want to bring a real good friend of mine on and we're going to have a great conversation. Shawn, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Brad. Thanks for having me, man.
Man, it's a pleasure. So 3 weeks ago, we were able to stop by your office and stop by your home, and we were able to check in. We were doing some RVing, and we went and had a little, meet and greet there at the house, and got to see your place. And man, what a cool place it is! It's a neat place. And one of the things that we want to talk about is your new venture with HomeVault, and you're the CEO. And so this is a conglomerate of several other property management company players and property management company organizations teaming up. So probably stop me there before I butcher it too bad, but we see a lot of stuff flying around about this. We see some good things you guys have been doing, some presentations at different conferences, and of course you got some good Facebook presence going on. So tell us what it is.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So HomeVault was a group of us that decided to make something bigger. We see the changes in the industry. The industry is rapidly changing. I think you see something like waste management, the waste world in the 90s, and there's a lot of roll-ups and, acquisitions happening. And we wanted to be on the forefront of that. Obviously, there's, already big players, but we're not VC capital backed. We're bootstrapping it and trying to be strategic in our acquisitions and roll-ups that we do, and make sure that we are really just vetting who we want to partner with, and who we want to go forward with, and that's kind of the objective. We want to scale to a large number, and I don't want to throw the number out because everybody's like, "Oh, that's the number," but we want to scale to a large number and just be effective and be effortl's for our clients. That's really important for us.
Yeah,
and,
I know what you mean about the large number, because I always give Matt Whitaker a hard time. They're growing Evernest and they're acquiring, and they said they want to be at 25,000 doors in 10 minutes. And, everyone kind of giggles at them, and they're not that crazy. I'm just giving him a hard time. But, the goals are one thing, but I totally get what you're coming from. And you start like throwing some of those things out there and everyone wants to hate on it, versus it's the big, hairy, audacious goal. It's good to have a target in mind, because what that does is it allows you to break it down into smaller pieces and make more manageable, reachable goals in 6 months, 6 minutes, 6 years, whatever they could be. It depends on that big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, what I want you to talk about is some of the players involved in the different markets, because that's kind of a fascinating thing, bringing all the different players from different areas together. So who are they?
Yeah, so our partners, Matt Tringali, Tony Klein, Jay Barabee, Danny Plitteman, and Kristen Johnson, my wife. And what's really cool is that we all kind of found our niche in the business. What what I think people fear is that you get a bunch of, the go-to person in their previous businesses, and you get a lot of egos involved. And it took us a little bit to really catch our stride. But once we caught our stride, we realized, like, there are superpowers in here. People do have unique abilities, and we need to expand and let them freely, expand on those, so that we can be better as a company, and we could be profitable and work together and actually achieve these goals as one. So everybody has their talents, and we get to stay in our own lanes, which is really, really fantastic.
Yeah, one of the huge challenges you mentioned is having too many cooks in the kitchen, right? There's always that saying where you have all these strong egos doing one thing and everyone wants to be in charge. So one of the challenges, if I understand this correctly, is when you guys formed, all of you got together and formed this new entity, you really had to spend some effort and time in deciding on who's going to do what, who's going to have what title, who's going to make what salaries if there is a difference, and who's going to have decision-making authority. And so I ended up, I understand that you're the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer, and there's several others below that. Now, Kristen also found her niche as the accounting person. I don't know if you want to call that the CFO, maybe it's just a different term, but kind of talk me through that, because I got to imagine there had to have been a little bit of teeth pulling, a little bit of wrangling, a little bit of hurt feelings here and there. Or maybe there wasn't. I mean, tell me how that went.
Sure. I think there have, for me, I'll just speak for myself. It's easier that way, and I don't misspeak, but I'm just really level-headed, and I don't try to bring emotions into these things. At the end of the day, we have a common goal, and the common goal is to make HomeVault the best company we can, and to serve the marketplace the best way we can. And, for me, it was, you could recognize hurt feelings, but me as a CEO, I think part of my job is to de-escalate drama, to make sure that we are, meeting the vision that we've set forth together, and, just go for the common goal. And sometimes we don't see eye to eye, and that's okay. But there is a board, the 6 of us are on the board, and sometimes it goes to a board vote, and we don't all see eye to eye. But one thing we did say at the beginning is, if there's a vote, and if it was against the way you voted, then we just need to get over it and see the vision of the company and move on, and support the decision of the board. That's extremely important.
So far, so good. I mean, has there been any fun examples of that? I mean, let's talk about the color of your website, right? Did you guys, go through just trials and tribulations and knockdown, drag out fights over this? I mean, just for fun, do you have any good stories on that?
Oh man, we could spend days probably talking about these things, because we did, like, at the beginning, we got into the nitty gritty of this stuff, and at the end of the day, we realized that these little things, we should just trust in the person in charge of them to take it on. We don't have to be involved with every decision that's made, and as a matter of fact, we shouldn't be, because our time is better spent elsewhere. But yeah, let's talk about the website color. I mean, there's a couple of us that we wanted to not go with green, and because green was the previous color, and go with something different, but we settled on green, and we're happy with the branding. I think the branding is great, and it's important to, when you've settled on branding, is to get behind it and breathe it, right? Breathe, live, sleep, breathe the branding. So, whatever the color may be, it doesn't really matter, because it's really how you exude that brand to the marketplace.
Yeah, and it's interesting just for that in particular, because in any sort of roll-up effort, you might assume the biggest player has the first call. Now, I understand you were one of the bigger players that came in. You could have named it yourpropertymanagementcompany.com, and that's it. You guys joining me under my umbrella, and that's it. But you guys decided on a neutral brand, which I think sets a good precedent, good tone. Now, talk to me a little bit about your, let's say, roll-up acquisition growth strategy. Now, how are you looking to grow and make this an even better organization than what it is?
Yeah, great question, Brad. So really, our objective is roll-ups. That's first and foremost. I think our avatar in that is, somebody that is probably nearing the end of their career in property management, but not quite there yet. They want a couple years left, and we roll them up into the corporate, strategy here and try to decentralize their marketplace as much as possible while giving them some support at a corporate level so they can step back a little bit. They don't have to be the go-to guy, have to make every single decision and be stressed out until their career is ended. And so we, acquire that, give them a salary in their marketplace, and hopefully we can get them to their point of retirement where they enjoy retirement and they don't have to think about the crap of dealing with, the business and worried about, the tenant's toilet breaking at 2:00 in the morning. And we do want those smaller acquisitions, 300 or less is kind of our target. And that's really the avatar that we're shooting for.
But that's different than some other acquirers out there. They're looking for the bigger than 300.
Sure.
They're looking for the 5, 800, 10,000 unit acquisitions. Now, here's a fun conversation. Let's kick around the differences and maybe the minuses and detractors and pluses and minuses of private money, like what you guys are doing. You guys are basically self-funded. So at this point, you might have some borrowed equity at some point, mortgaging your house or selling kidneys or whatever y'all going to do, versus venture capital on the other side, where they're just taking, VC money by the millions and spending it willy-nilly to make themselves an interesting career. So talk to me about what the differences are in your opinion, and maybe this will highlight some good points of difference for you as a go-to type of a organization for any sort of acquisition. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think the VC, there's so much talk about VC money right now, and it's a great strategy. It can be a great strategy. One thing I see that, VC, and it may be just, the rumor mill because we don't get to peel back the books, but oftentimes that they're in the red for several years on end. And then they want to go either to, open an IPO or whatever the case might be, sell to a private entity at some point, and then they strike the gold, right? When you're bootstrapping it, it's totally different. You've got to be cash strong from day one. It's just, as a business, cash flows everything. And if you get cash weak, I don't know about you, but airplanes don't run off of air. They run off of fuel. You got to have fuel in the business. Cash flow is extremely important, and you got to keep the eye on the ball. So it's important to allocate your capital properly. When you bring on a new roll-up or an acquisition, there has to be allocation of capital in the proper way. And so therefore, it helps you strategically think how you bring on this portfolio and actually get it to be profitable from day one or very close to. When are we going to get a return on invested capital from when we acquire this company? And can we supplement that cash flow for a period of time, or do we need to make sure it's cash flowing day one?
I like that position and attitude, and here's why. Because what you're seeing in other places is a door grab. And what I mean by that is an entity will start up or they will look to grow really, really quick by doing, $1 a year management fee or just something absolutely outrageous in the marketplace just to get a bunch of doors. And their goal is to grab doors and then sell, right? I would say venture capital sometimes can be very much similar to that, where they're looking at the next level for the payday. So again, like you said, they'll run in the red. They're not so concerned about, charging fees. They're not so concerned about keeping owners happy or tenants happy. They just want to do a big door grab, roll up to a big number, and then take it public and or sell to a bigger entity. They always talk about a 5 or 10x, right? Yeah. They always talk about in the single family home residential property management space, you're looking at a 1 to 1.5x revenue for a multiple. And what they're trying to do is roll up 10,000 plus homes to get to 10 million plus in revenue, or whatever the number is, get to that 8 figures in revenue. That's when they think their multiples will triple, quadruple into the 5 to 8x range off of revenue. So to answer the question, what's the point? Well, if this is done right, you could roll up a bunch of different homes, be cash positive, and everybody at the exit in a year or 10 years or 20 years potentially cashes out a lot higher than they would by themselves. That's the whole, why are you doing this, right? Because if you can cash out at a bigger number than you could by yourself, why wouldn't you? correct?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, together in the doors in the marketplaces that we service, we have a higher multiple just naturally because of what we've been able to accomplish. Was that the main objective? Part of it, but the main objective really was to be able to have resources beyond what we could have in our single marketplace.
Yeah, that's a fun topic. So let's talk about that, because I love the economies of scale that this can create. And we talked about this briefly one time on an offline conversation where, where have you seen economies of scale so far? So let's spend a few minutes talking about that. Like, what are some wins for you at this point in the economies of scale game?
Yeah, economies of scale. I think one of them is labor. I think what you can do is you can have people. What you could do is you could fit similar marketplaces, and if they behave similarly, you could put labor in those marketplaces and really have people working in multiple marketplaces, which has been good. There are nuances that become a struggle. Some marketplace you can only do a 5-day notice to quit, and some of them you got to do a 14 or whatever. Those little nuances do become a problem. The other thing is just processes. Having intelligent processes where they, what do they call that? When they conditional logic, based off the marketplace. That's another economy of scale. The other one is like brokerage. Finding brokerage in brokerage formats and referring out those clients out to brokers out in different marketplaces has been very helpful in doing that on a mass scale instead of just trying to have one partner and you could build relationships at a different level. The challenge is the relationships become harder when you're just a name and a face. You have to be, front line and be networking and those things. Those are the challenges. They're the flip side of that.
So one thing I was going to talk to you about too is you guys are in the same boat as we are here at Rentworks. We're firm believers in working with remote team members. And so talk to me a little bit about how that's been working for you guys and the remote team member front. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I didn't mention too is just education. I think really education is really big. And so, our remote team members, we have found that it's been challenging to find US-based workers that want to do a good job, that aren't always on the hunt for new opportunities. And so you have high turnover. And so we have looked at other places, and you often find, and as you know, Brad, you often find highly skilled individuals that have sometimes master's degrees. And like right now, we're interviewing a gal that has a master's degree in project management. That would not really come in the US-based side unless you're willing to pay them, $80,000, $90,000 a year. And as you guys know, we're stacking nickels in this business. And to pay someone $80,000, $90,000 is not always doable, especially if it's a property manager or something like that. So, but I have to say that the remote team member side of this, what's extremely important is uniforming, training, and education. So one of the things that I loved about what we've been able to build in this less than 1 year from launch is an internal intranet with courses, property management courses and culture courses, and how to do a lease renewal and all of those things that we do. And that's one of my favorite things we do, because I think education is so important on how we become an expert to our clients.
So one good segue into one thing we want to talk about is some of the platforms that you're using as far as getting this done, because to get all these people, remote team members, working on one distinct idea, one distinct issue, you have to have a platform uniformity project, because when you come together, you guys were all probably using different platforms and different softwares and all this other stuff going on. And now, okay, we're all working together, so we need to get on the same page. What is the same page? Talk to me some about some of the challenges you saw with that, and where do you guys think you're going to go in the next 6 days, 6 months in getting on the same page?
Yeah, great question. This was probably one of our biggest challenges we faced from day one, is that we did have multiple different platforms. Some of us used Help Scout, some of us didn't. Some were on PropertyWare, some were on AppFolio. And what we decided to do is try to find the platform that we could see it in the future. So we kept with Help Scout. We launched it through all markets. We went with Appfolio at the time, but we are actually transitioning now to RentVine as an entire company. Our last roll up, we from day one, we put into RentVine, and that's been fantastic. What we found really fast is that Appfolio is a company, great product. They have a bunch of features, just fantastic features. The challenge is that when you're doing all of these things, you're integrating multiple companies' books, and you just have to have a closer relationship with customer support. You have to have people that are there at closer than 48 hours to get a response back. You know what I mean? So we found really fast that Appfolio was probably not who we can scale with, and RentVine is who we can scale with. And those guys have been phenomenal with making little tweaks. Like, for instance, New Mexico is one of those weird states that charges a gross receipt tax on any service you provide. So a management fee or a resident benefits fee, we have to charge a gross receipts or a sales tax. On top of that, Appfolio has known these. There's 13 states like this, have known about this, and have been unwilling to provide, change their software to fit this issue. RentVine did it almost overnight, and so that's the difference of maybe a smaller company that does care, and then not a open IPO, a NASDAQ type of company. So.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So we did a good podcast with Mike Mengden about his experience in crossing over from whatever software he was on into RentVine. It was all positive. I mean, of course, there's going to be things that pop up out of the blue, but the team there really did Johnny on the spot, Cheetah flip to make things happen and fix everything going on. Now, when are you going live on RentVine?
So we're hoping to do it at the end of Q3 for the bulk of the portfolio, and we're talking about close to 1,000 doors we're switching over there. So there's a lot of preparation in that. We're actually training a lot of our accounting staff now to be prepared for that. It's not, luckily, or unfortunately, it's not a flip of a switch,
No, it never is. And anytime you change softwares, that's like the most disruptive thing you can do in your business. It is a huge, huge pain. And so you only really want to do it once, and making the change is a challenge. So, you guys have already detailed out a plan from what I understand, and hearing about this later on. So kind of what's the plan, and how are they doing it to where it's a painless as much as possible, right? It's probably a literal Band-Aid, but talk us through some of the process you have in that transition.
Yeah, so right now what we're doing is we're discovering, through our latest roll-up that's using RentVine, we're discovering how each and every process has to be done through RentVine. And so that's all going into our training platform now. And what we want to do is have all of those modules or those lessons created before we actually go live as the company, and they'll be put into the intranet. And so it takes time to build that stuff out, and that's really why we're strategically waiting a little bit, so that way the team has the resources at hand and how to do that. And then obviously it's how do you make the least amount of impact on your clients? It's also client education. This is how your new owner statement's going to read. This is how your new cash flow statement will read. When you'll get a 1099, how do you log into your portal, and those types of things, and make those as educational for them as well. So it's communication in front instead of them wondering and having to ask questions, which will only flood your phones and your emails.
Enterprise Bank and Trust, the bank you all formerly knew as Seacoast Commerce Bank. With the same team, the same benefits, and an expanded and improved product suite. Enterprise Bank and Trust specializes in trust accounts and business banking for property managers. One of their best features is a cash analysis program where they can assist in paying your property management related invoices. Contact Allison at 619-988-6708 to learn more.
Yeah, so let's talk through this. So what does your CFO, I believe her name is Miss Kristen.
Yep.
She's the very lovely Miss Kristen Johnson, your wife, of course. So what is her feedback on RentVine? Is she pretty excited about this transition?
She is ecstatic. She loves it. She's actually been one of the biggest driving forces of this transition. She's probably it's funny. She always has a saying, like, she could probably be paid a ton of money being a Appfolio expert because she knows it more than anybody that I know. And she's willing to give all of that expertise up to transition to something that's easier. Like, why does the beginning and ending balance not match this month? And those questions that we face as property managers, that our clients ultimately lose trust in us when they see those issues. And we've got to solve those before they go out to our clients, so she's excited about it.
Yeah. One of the challenges we're facing at RentWorks, just to give you a little vignette side story, is so we're down an accounting coordinator. And so we're thinking about hiring another remote team member to do more accounting to help Amy, our director of accounting. And so that remote team member could do nothing but look at owner statements, and they could do nothing but review collections, and they focusing on those types of things inside of the accounting business. But, I always tell people that, remote team members, they can do anything that you or I can do. Anybody in the audience listening, they can do anything from a distance that you or I could do from a distance. And sometimes people they don't believe us, right? They just, and it's kind of baffling because when it really smacks you in the face, Shawn, about interviewing remote team members, especially potentially in Mexico or Philippines or wherever, there's some of the talent that comes across, and then it just takes one Zoom call and you see the lights are on and they're speaking English in a way that you can understand easily. There may not even be an accent there at all because they may have gone to high school or college in the States. So it really is a pretty interesting deal, but they work for far less, and you can make them far happier by paying them what you pay them and get a really good, solid team member. Now, that aside, it's just an interesting side story about us. I want you to talk about the lessons learned, what you mentioned earlier, in making this transition, doing this acquisition roll up and putting these partnerships together. Talk about a few of those that you might want to mention.
Yeah, I think there's two big lessons learned for myself. Number one is that we attempted to centralize as much as we possibly could, and then have local boots on the ground field agents. And what we learned pretty quick is that's probably not the best way to go. We wanted to decentralize command, have each marketplace be able to make decisions that are conducive to their marketplace. They're not, it's easy for a corporation to, just be top down all the time, but it doesn't solve real world issues like it should. And those people, we should never ignore the frontline staff feedback because they're the ones dealing with the challenges. And
so let's talk through that in specifics. Let's talk through that. So let's say, for example, just in leasing, this is going to be fun because it's going to actually put it in context. Different markets charge different things for move-in. There might be a security deposit, there might be a pet deposit, there might not be. There's all kinds of things, and credit scores. Credit score needs could be different in one market versus another market. And so it's very difficult for a corporation like HomeVault, as you started up, to say, okay, everybody must have a 680 plus TransUnion tenant score to be considered for our properties. And some of your partners would say that will never fly. Not going to do it. You're killing my business. And if a corporation said, nope, that's how it's going to be, period, it would just cause all kinds of problems. So any specifics on that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think you hit on one. Application screening is a big one. How we find fair market value for a rental property is another. I don't think just being at a corporation in somebody, in Zimbabwe or something knows the market as well as that person that is in the marketplace, like a market director. We call them market directors, but they're the, broker in charge typically. And they know the marketplace better. And so, try to do it in-house or in a the corporate office style just didn't work. They don't know the nuances, and they don't know even though they can look on Zillow and the comps and all that stuff, but also knowing tenant move-in fees. What's going to work in some marketplaces doesn't work in others. For instance, we do a cleaning fee that we charge up front, and then they don't have to clean the property at the end. It works great in our Charlotte office. Doesn't work good in our Denver office. We've tried. And so, I think the learning lesson here is to test it in a marketplace. Don't just flip the switch, test it and see how it's going to work, and then make a decision.
Yeah, great example. I love it. So let's switch gears completely. We talked about some of the lessons learned and challenges with rolling it up. I think it's a fantastic deal. I want to talk specifically about something completely off in the right field that you and I touched on in the green room before we jumped on. And that's using the business as the means, as a platform, as a base to go out and do other things, such as buying other businesses, doing a syndication, buying rental homes, building a commercial building, I don't know, starting your own Little League team. I mean, whatever you're going to do, but you use the business of the property management as it can be built up to run more of itself, to give you that base and cash flow. For example, specifically, you're doing a syndication right now, and you briefly touched on it. I want you to talk through that because I think that's absolutely just fascinating. I could listen to this stuff all day long. I'll bounce a couple questions off you, but I know the audience out there would love to hear this because we all, get trapped in our bubble, in our lane of like property management, company owners, paying owners, of surviving with our employees, et cetera. We all get trapped in that blinder lane, but you're doing stuff on your right and left. And that's what's really cool to hear. So talk to me about that syndication you got going on.
Yeah. So, just to hint on, investing in general, I think property management is like the gateway drug of good investing in real estate. And if you're not investing in real estate as a property manager, you're missing the big point here. We don't have retirements to go to in 401ks, or you can, but the reality is that real estate is just such a great investment vehicle you should not miss out on. So to get to the point, my wife and I built up a nice portfolio of residential and commercial properties. We love those. They cash flow great, right? But to take it to the next level and how to build the property management company was the natural next step was to syndicate something. And so we found a off-market 40-plex in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in a new and upcoming neighborhood right across from Kirtland Air Force Base. We're really excited about it, but really the syndication, the whole point of that is to find and to help other investors achieve their investment goals through the network of people we already work with. And so that way it is passive income, just like their rental property, because they utilize a property manager. It's passive income for them that they could get a nice return, and they're not getting the headache and the gray hair and the hair pulling out of dealing with the rental property on a day-to-day basis. And that's really why we chose to go the next level. And of course, I've been looking at this strategy for several years. I have some good friends that do it or that are coaching me through this, and it's a big challenge, but it's fun, and it helps other people achieve their investment goals.
So are you able to talk through some of the numbers if I ask you direct questions?
I could talk some numbers, yes.
Some generalities.
Yeah, because it has not closed yet. It will. We're actually renegotiating close date to August 30th as we speak.
Okay. So let's talk general terms. Let's say it's worth $1 million, right?
Sure.
So how many slices of the pie did you carve out of that?
Yeah, so great question. So typically, and they could be structured a million ways, but typically how they work is that you get partners that are the general partners, and they're the ones that are going to operate the apartment complex and the day-to-day decisions. And they split the shares, usually 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, something like that. We did 50-50 on ours. And so those partners are 50% owners, and the other 50% owners are those investors that want limited partnership, and they provide the capital to pull down the down payment, the CapEx expenses, reserves, banking reserves, those types of things. And then you split shares or profits accordingly to their shares. Now, some syndicators like myself do a preferred return. I like preferred returns. People like to see a return on their money, and I want to give them the first hit on their money. There's some that will say, we'll just split profits 50-50 throughout the whole deal, and we'll disseminate it based off of how much you put into the deal. I like preferred returns just because for me as an investor, I'd much rather see a return because I'm putting my capital out there than for hoping for, I don't like hopium, you know what I mean? Performance. So I want to see a return for my investors before I see a return.
So a couple wins that are underneath the surface that people may not realize, and I don't know the deal that you got going on here, but if you're able to be the broker consummating the deal, you make a commission. And I don't know if you are or not, but just
my
think
wife
of that.
Is. Yep. Kristen
okay,
is.
There you go. So Kristen's making a commission as the broker, realtor consummating the deal. you as a management company could be potentially winning, as now you are managing the structure. And you may not, because it's in Albuquerque, but let's say it's in your local market. You could create your own management resource. You're acting as a business development person for yourself and creating a whole nother section of management. Maybe you're doing that, maybe you're not, but I'm just throwing it out there. Yep. And in addition, you have the monthly cash flow that you're going to be receiving. You're going to be managing those funds. Then if there's an exit strategy, let's say 2 years, 20 years, you may be the outgoing broker that sells that particular property, again, potentially winning. So going back to your original statement, property management is literally the epicenter of that entire syndication transaction. What am I missing about that? What did I forget?
Nothing. I think you're exactly right. And just to hint on the property management side, it's a great way to build your portfolio. We're in a marketplace where every accidental landlord is looking to sell their property right now. And if you want to help investors get a return, all those landlords that are selling a property, they're either going to pay capital gains taxes. They may do a 1031 if that's going to exist in the future. We don't know yet. But they typically are going to put their money somewhere. Maybe it's paying for their college tuition or whatever, their kids' college tuition, but they may need another avenue to put their money into. And this is a great way to help them get a return on their money. They'll have cash heavy, and you can buy. There's a couple folks in our community that syndicate single family rental properties. You buy a big portfolio of rental properties and syndicate those out with investors. I think that's a great strategy. If that's your niche, go for it. It's a great way to invest and to build your portfolio.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to be able to see how this year plays out. One of my largest investors is selling all of his rental properties. I believe it's 15 in total. And I'm actually being the broker on this. So it's kind of like, okay, I haven't sold homes in 4 or 5 years, but I'm jumping back in to help him sell his, just because he was one of the first clients I really brought on. I really want to make sure he's taken care of. I might make mistakes here and there, but at the end of the day, they're on me and not somebody else that I pawned him off on. But he's taking all those, selling them, and then putting all that right into the market, into a big giant Vanguard fund of his. Oh, wow. And so this is one of the smartest gentlemen I've ever met. He was a former CEO, and he's just a super sharp cat. And so he's putting all that in there. So there must be some sort of indication. And a big part of why they're doing that now is the market is absolute hottest ever been. It's like high water time. So sell everything. So next year, we may see a downturn. We don't know. Interest rates could flatten out. The administration could put a bunch of new crazy stuff out there. And next thing you know, all the sales side just kind of flattens out and things go back to AKA normal. And that might be where property managers say, okay, Mr. Reluctant Landlord, I know you're dying to get out of the market. Let's talk turkey. Let's do a wrap. Let's do an owner financing. Let's just, try to get conventional financing and let's pay it out cash flow. Let's talk turkey. I know several PMs that are buying up properties left and right. And I'm baffled to see where are they even coming from? Because in this market, anything that pops up on the real estate market for sale, under a certain threshold is gone in minutes, competing offers. And it's just a really, really difficult time to purchase. And so when the market does cool, I hope that the property managers that are listening to this, they're in line with their mindset to be able to go out and potentially acquire a few assets. You don't have to buy 20 in a day. Maybe you buy 1 a year or 2 a year, but you should be setting up your processes and your systems inside of your office that if an owner says they want to sell, you, the business owner, you, the portfolio manager, should be having the right of first refusal. You should be taking a look at that and say, oh, I understand you want to sell, Mr. Seller. Well, how about I buy? We have a buyer, me, you, a seller, you, and next thing you know, you buy and you turn it into a rental property in your own management company. Yep. And that's the key to building wealth inside of property management, is creating a system to where you can gather those assets and put them under your control in any manner, fashion you can. It doesn't have to be a straight up writing a check. Get creative, right? Yeah. And that might be the key.
No, well said. I think that's one thing that we as an industry miss, is that we don't have to be conventional loan mindset folk. I don't have to put 20% down on everything, go get a conventional loan and buy a property. Think outside of that. I mean, I have a bunch of properties that are what we call real estate contracts or subject to that the owner financed, and some of them might put zero down. I had an owner one time that I hate my rental property so bad, and he had a great property. I will sell it to you at 0% interest if you'll just refinance it out in 5 years. Why wouldn't I do that? You know what I mean? It's just mind blowing. So, I mean, think creatively. I think there's a lot of ways to use other people's money to build your own wealth. And you need to just be a steward of that money. That's what's important.
All right, let's talk case study. I'll give you an example of that exactly. So 7 years ago, I had an owner who was dying to get out of their property. They were moving to El Paso. They had a little home on the southeast side. It was maybe valued at that point like 90. Their loan was like 82 or something like that. And so I ended up basically doing a subject to a non-qualifying assumption, a wrap. There's probably 5 other terms for this exact scenario. It gets a little confusing, but essentially I took over payments, and then I used everything changed hands. The property was in my name. I paid taxes on it. I got the tax credit for it, but the loan was in their name. And so the loan stayed in their name. Last week, I closed on that property and made $100,000.
Yep. That's fantastic.
Where I'm going, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you that's an actual case study, because if you don't have your ears open to some of these, you're not going to know. So what am I doing with that 100K? I'm rolling it into a commercial property. I'm monopolizing that, right? I've talked about this before, to where, the whole monopoly thing, you sell 4 rental properties and you buy a hotel. Well, I'm selling rental properties and I'm building a commercial building for Rentworks, which is, one of my investment strategies for this coming next 12 months is get that commercial property up and running. And so, I talk to people about this, and you and I just kicked it around. I'm just giving people a real world case study, because it's one thing to hear about this crap from Tony Robbins, right? Or Grant Cardone, but no, this is meager old you and I. We're doing these deals, wish we could do it on a daily basis, but they do fall in your lap. And you got to be ready and be able to jump on it and say, okay, Mr. Owner, let's get creative. I can solve your problem right now. I'll take over the payments. I'll take over the maintenance. We do this, we do that. We're done. And then, we'll have a balloon payment in 5 years if you want. Just like what your investor mentioned is, buy me out in 5 years and we'll call it good. And you're like, how many of these can I get? Right.
Yeah. I think the key takeaways there is to be willing to take the first look. Make sure that you put your eyes on it before it hits the marketplace, and be the easy button. People want easy. They don't want to have to call a realtor and figure out what, the BPO and all this other crap, and then put it on the marketplace, kick the tenant out. I lose my cash flow, all those things. Look, let's keep the tenant. I'll just take it off your hands right now. We'll solve all your stress. You don't even have to worry about it. I'll even pay your mortgage payment. Even if you give me the login to your mortgage payment, I'll log in and I'll pay, and I'll put it on auto payment, and we'll never, ever skip a beat. People like that easy button.
And one thing about that specifically is the big objection that people misunderstand is they think the lender on that side is going to call the note due.
Right.
Okay, it could happen. And I say could with air quotes. It could happen. But I have never heard of that. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I don't know why a lender would ever want to do that.
It would be a bad business decision on the lender's part.
Correct. Bad business decision, especially if you never give them reason to. Yep. If you're making those payments on an unqualifying assumption, a subject to wrap, whatever term you want to call it, you're making those payments like clockwork. There's no reason for that lender to call it due. So right. It's one of the things that we wanted to dispel, because people might say that right away. Oh, the lender could call it due and you're in a bad position. All right. Yeah, they could. But in the history of reality, it doesn't happen. Why would they?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never heard it happening. I mean, it could, but it's just not a smart business move on their part.
Yeah, exactly. So this conversation went from HomeVault into RentBind into syndication. Kind of a cool chat that we had. And so I'm really excited to see what you guys can do in the HomeVault situation. One thing I may have forgot to ask you was the HomeVault Academy. Talk to me about that, because I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Yeah, HomeVault Academy was something that Tony thought of, and just really had a huge vision for it. And the whole point is to provide resources for the people that we love the most, as fellow property managers. We get we empathize, we sympathize for the stress that this industry has. And we just want to be able to provide great resources so people across the entire marketplace can be better property managers. It's the typical raising tides raise all boats. That's the whole point. We want to help other people achieve their goals in property management. And obviously it's an avenue for us. If somebody's really struggling and they're just sick of it, look us up. We are looking for expansion and roll-ups. So that's the whole point of it.
Yeah, exactly. So where do they find a little bit more information on this stuff?
Yeah, HomeVault Academy is on HomeVault Academy's Facebook group. I think you just search HomeVault Academy. HomeVault.com is our website. You'll see our various marketplaces in there. They can call me if they want. I could give my cell phone if that's what they're looking for. But happy to support any way. I love talking about property management and talking shop, and especially real estate investing.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. That's why I want to bring you on, because I figured we'd have a good combo, at least about both. So, Shawn, I really enjoyed our conversation today. I want to thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you at the next Property Manager Mastermind Conference in May of 2022 at the Red Rock Resort in Las Vegas. Look forward to seeing you there. Any parting comments?
Yes. Parting comment is, when you book that, make sure it's clear on my schedule so I could be there. But I'm excited for it, man. I appreciate it.
Will do, my friend. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Imagine a world where the phone doesn't ring, but tenant leads still get pre-qualified and scheduled. Where in-person showings get coordinated automatically in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Where occupants and owners are automatically notified of showings and leasing reports. Or imagine no one has to show your rentals, and they get leased faster than ever, safely and securely. That's the world of Tenant Turner. Come learn more about our beautiful scheduling software and world-class customer support. Call us 888-976-4638 or visit www.tenantturner.com.
This has been a podcast episode by PropertyManagementProductions.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave us feedback, and come back for our next episode.